Okay, fam. So if Bud ain't fighting the best welterweights, who's the best welterweights then? This I gotta hear. Who's the best welterweights then? Come on, keep your boy King David entertained. Let's hear it.
Well, he ain't really entertained fighting people like Danny Garcia.
People like Danny Garcia. People like Danny Garcia. People like Danny Garcia.
So what I do, YouTube? It's your boy King David in this thing, and I'm back at y'all again with another video. So before we get going with the video, man, I'ma need y'all to go ahead, hit the like button. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe one time for your boy so we can continue to grow like we need to grow on this channel. Alright, so with all that out the window, man, y'all see what the title of the video is. Fanager Talk Debunked Part 2. So, you know, as I mentioned on the last Fanager Talk video, man, this is an installment series where we just go on the YouTube channels and we just gonna debunk some of the talking points that some of these dudes got in regards to Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, and all the little fake narratives, false narratives that they want to put out there on the boxing highways and byways. Now, this particular Fanager Talk is gonna be a little bit different because in this particular video, it's gonna be more like a response video to another YouTuber who actually decided they wanted to do a video about your boy. So, you know, I'm going to be responding to them in the talking points that they're putting out there in the boxing highways and byways and just pretty much deflating and debunking some of the BS arguments that they got floating around out here on the highways and byways, right? So before we get cooking on this, man, I'm just going to go ahead and frame this whole situation for you. I'm going to go ahead and set the stage, man, because it's a lot to unpack here with this whole video and all this shit going on. It's a lot to unpack, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to frame this thing, right? So there's three very important things I need you to know prior to me getting into the meat and potatoes of what it is I'm going to be talking about. The first thing is, so first of all, the channel that I'm doing this video about, Boxing Vibes, right, did a response video to a video that I put out a few weeks back, right? And in that video, I mentioned how Danny Garcia wasn't a credible welterweight, right? Which is not, which I'm going to prove more in this video. But I pretty much mentioned that Danny Garcia wasn't a credible welterweight, right? So this person, Boxing Vibes, right? They didn't like that I made that statement because, of course, by me making that statement, it takes away some of the credit that a lot of these dudes love to give Errol Spence for beating somebody like a Danny Garcia, right? Even though it's a huge contradiction because these guys will turn around and give Errol Spence for all this credit for beating Danny Garcia, but in the same breath they want to discredit Terrence Bud Crawford from being a worthy or viable welterweight, which is asinine in itself. Now, I'm not saying that's what this dude does, but that's what a lot of Errol Spence fans do. Nevertheless, that's the first thing I want y'all to know. The second thing I need y'all to understand is the dude talking here is going to be an extreme Errol Spence fanboy, right? Now, if you go to his channel and you listen to the stuff that he says, he's going to come off initially as an unbiased and unobjective boxing fan, right? He's going to come off that way because those are a lot of the words that he likes to say, right? But if you listen closely, you can hear a lot of the rhetoric, the Errol Spence fanboy rhetoric, and a lot of the same talking points and undertones that a lot of these extreme Errol Spence fanboys use on a regular basis, right? So really, nigga, you're really not fooling nobody. I know you an Errol Spence fanboy, but you may not admit you're an Errol Spence fanboy, but I know you're an Errol Spence fanboy. It is what it is at the end of the day. I don't, you know. And the third thing I need y'all to understand is I'm going to put up Danny Garcia's resume at 147 pounds. I'm going to put it up here on the screen so you can see. I need y'all to have a full comprehension / understanding of Danny Garcia's resume at 147 pounds. And I want you to make the determination on whether or not he's a credible welterweight for Errol Spence Jr. or anyone else for that matter. Now, before we dig into Danny Garcia's resume at 147, we got to take an overall look at Danny Garcia's career in order to get a full understanding of Danny Garcia at 147. For starters, if you look at majority of his resume, you're going to see a lot of fighters that were well past their prime. A lot of fighters well past their prime. A lot of fighters that really shouldn't have been in the ring in the first place if you look at Danny Garcia's resume. Now, I'm not saying that to say that Danny Garcia's entire resume is trash. That's not what I'm saying. There's a few good ones on there like Amir Khan. There's a few good ones on there like Lucas Matisse. But overall, you should know that Danny Garcia's resume in general is heavily inflated, right? He was built up to be, a guy. After the Amir Khan win, they were heavily invested in the development of Danny Garcia as a Puerto Rican fighter or a Philly fighter, right? So that's Danny Garcia in a nutshell, career-wise, right? But then you look at his resume here at 147 pounds, right? You look at Danny Garcia's resume at 147 and look at this here. Danny Garcia has a total of 6 wins and 3 losses, okay, at welterweight. So the nigga has a 66% win percentage at welterweight, y'all. All right, 6 wins and 3 losses. These are his welterweight fights, right? And then if you look at the wins he got at 147 pounds, you see the weakest possible competition that you can think of. Paulie Malignaggi towards the end of his career. Robert Guerrero, right? Towards the end of his career. Samuel Vargas.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Brandon Rios towards the end of his career, right? Come on now. Adrian Granados. I mean, he was a good 140 pounder, and that's the other thing about Danny Garcia, y'all. A lot of the opponents that Danny Garcia has fought, even at welterweight, most of these guys were guys coming up from lower weight divisions. So we're talking about 135 pounders, 140 pounders coming up to fight Danny Garcia at 147 pounds. Now, I'm not saying that they fought Danny Garcia in their first fight at 147 pounds. Some of them had a few fights at 147, like Robert Guerrero and Paulie Malignaggi. But the thing that you should understand is these dudes were not natural welterweights, right? They were naturally smaller guys, even smaller than Danny Garcia, a guy who came up from 140 pounds. Robert Guerrero, for example, came all the way up from goddamn, I believe, 130 pounds, right? I believe he was either a lightweight or even lower than that, right? Don't quote me on all that, but I believe he was even lower than that, and he came up to 147 pounds, right? Ivan Rechkach. I mean, who the fuck is that guy? Another 140 pounder, right? So, Danny Garcia's resume at 147 pounds, all in all, he's 6-3, right? These are facts. He's 6-3 at welterweight. But in addition to that, the wins that he was able to get at welterweight weren't even from natural welterweights. Okay? In Adrian Granados, in Ivan Rechkach, in Samuel Vargas, in Robert Guerrero, and Paulie Malignaggi, all these dudes moved up from smaller weight classes. Okay? So he's not fighting natural welterweights, he's fighting small guys who came up, right? I'd even go as far as to say every time he did step in a ring with a natural welterweight, aka Errol Spence Jr., aka Sean Porter, aka Keith Thurman, every time he did get in the ring with a natural welterweight, granted they were the top welterweights in the division, but every time he did get in the ring with a natural welterweight, he lost. You know what I mean? So I need y'all to understand that first and foremost, man. You know what I mean? You know. Now, I actually have a bonus, right? A bonus thing that y'all should know. And a fourth thing that y'all should know prior to me getting into the meat and potatoes of the video, right? And the fourth thing that y'all should know is there's a difference between top 10 welterweight and credible welterweight, right? Because there are guys at different weight divisions who would technically qualify as a top 10 welterweight, right? Chocolatito could move up right now to light heavyweight and get a shot at the WBC champion and be considered top 10 according to the ranking systems. That's what a lot of these dudes either don't know or won't show. Top 10 rankings don't mean shit. And then the other thing about it is, they don't understand enough about boxing in order to know that the rankings are fake. They don't understand that anybody can be put as a top 10 welterweight. They don't understand that all you got to do is pay some money and be ranked in the top 10 in any sanctioning body. They don't get that. It's funny to me that certain Errol Spence fans love to use arguments when it's convenient. When it's convenient to go by the sanctioning bodies and the rankings, then they're going to go by the sanctioning body and they're going to go by the rankings, right? Because at the end of the day, Garcias is the top 10 welterweight. He was ranked in the top 10 in the WBO rankings. Okay? So he would be a top 10 opponent, but Bud's not going to get credit for beating an Garcias, right? Which would be technically considered a top 10 opponent, right? Because nobody knows Garcias, right? They don't know his name. So he's not a top 10 opponent. But Danny Garcia is somebody who also technically qualifies as a top 10 welterweight. Oh, we got to give Errol Spence all this credit for beating a Danny Garcia, who's a top 10 welterweight. But Bud Crawford gets no credit for beating another top 10 welterweight in Garcias. You know who else was a top 10 welterweight? Amir Khan was a top 10 welterweight. You know who else was a top 10 welterweight? Kell Brook was a top 10 welterweight. You know who else was a top 10 welterweight? Sean Porter was a top 10 welterweight. But these are all opponents that for some reason Terrence Bud Crawford doesn't get credit for beating. But I digress. Let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of the video, man. Let's hear what this dude Boxing Vibes got to say about your boy King David. Let's go.
Some crazy Terrence Crawford fans, delusional, ignorant, lying Terrence Crawford fans, and it's ridiculous, bro. And I'm so tired of it, man. So basically, I was on a YouTuber by the name of Box or Die. I was on his channel, and you know, of course he's pro Bud. You know, he rooting for Bud and stuff like that, which is no problem. You know, I don't got a problem with people, you know, having their opinions and things like that, but your opinion has to be objective for me to respect it. Your opinion has to make sense for me to actually respect it. You know what I'm saying? To hold any weight in reality, your opinion has to be objective, bro. It has to be, bro.
So you can already hear the Errol Spence fanboy energy come out of him. You can already hear him. All delusional, crazy Terrence Crawford fans, like just crazy, just you can already hear the Errol Spence fanboy energy come up out of him. You know what I'm saying? Because again, man, a lot of these dudes, they pretend to be unbiased and, you know, all these different things and objective according to what they say, right? But at the end of the day, man, y'all are clearly biased. You know what I mean? There's no reason to talk about being unbiased when you're clearly biased. You know what I mean? Yeah, you want to be as objective as possible, but it's clear that you dudes aren't anywhere close to the level of objectivity that you should be. You know, especially if you're gonna speak on the shit. You know what I mean? You know, I don't go around talking about, oh, I'm objective. No, you know what I mean? Because I'm probably going to have certain biases when it comes to certain fighters and certain things, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I know the sport, and I can back up all the things that I say with logic, with a logic that you can follow. You know what I mean? But it is what it is, man. You know, but you can already hear the Errol Spence fanboy energy come up out of him, man, when he talks about Terrence Crawford and Terrence Crawford's fans and things like that. So, you know, yeah, it is what it is, but let's keep it going.
So, I saw under the comment section of his video, you know, somebody was talking about how Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia wasn't legitimate, you know, welterweights. And it's like, okay, you can honestly give you Mikey Garcia, like, okay, Mikey Garcia wasn't legit welterweight. He came from 135.
Like, bro, what you mean give? Nigga, Mikey Garcia literally came up and fought Errol Spence in his first fight at welterweight. Ain't no give. These are just facts, fam. You can already see, like, dude don't even want to give you. He didn't even want to. It hurt him to actually say that. You know what I mean? But let's keep it going.
That's perfectly fine. I give you that. But he said Danny Garcia as well. It's like, how? You know what I'm saying? And somebody had said, you know, underneath that comment, they said Danny Garcia lost every big fight at 147, so he's not a legit welterweight. You know, he's not a legit welterweight. And it's like, what, bro? He was in the big fights because he was a legit welterweight.
All right, so cuz over here capping already. You know what I'm saying? So Danny Garcia was in the big fights. So that makes him a credible welterweight. You know what I'm saying? Like, bruh, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Canelo Alvarez fought Dimitri Bivol in his second fight at 175 pounds, right? Second fight because the first fight was maybe 5 years prior to that. But, I mean, you could say he fought Sergey Kovalev in his first fight at 175 pounds. Are you saying that makes him a credible light heavyweight? The fact that he fought for a belt means that he's a credible welterweight. See, this is what I'm saying, bro. This is where these Errol Spence fans, they get twisted up in their logic. Because if that's what you're saying, then Mikey Garcia, by that same explanation, should also be a credible welterweight by that definition. But you earlier already said that Mikey Garcia was not a credible welterweight. So which one is it, fam? Is it that you fight for a belt and that makes you a credible welterweight? Or is there some other criteria that we don't know about? Because based on your logic, fam, Canelo Alvarez should be a credible light heavyweight. Mikey Garcia should be a credible welterweight. I mean, Kell Brook moved up to fight Triple G at 160, so he should be a credible middleweight according to the logic that you just used just right now, fam. You know what I mean? But let's keep it going, though.
Like, let's be clear on that. He was a legit welterweight. That's why he was in the big fights that he lost. Yes, he lost. He lost a split decision to Keith Thurman, and he lost a unanimous decision to Sean Porter. So he clearly can compete with the top guys of the division, which makes him a top guy. Now, if you can't compete with the top competition, then you're not amongst the top guys.
Wait a minute, fam. Hold on, I'm confused. Is Danny Garcia a top welterweight because he's been in the big fights? Or is he a top welterweight because he survived in the ring with top welterweights? Which one is it, fam? I'ma really need you to pick one, bro. Which one is it? It's funny to me how Errol Spence fans love to make up rules and then pick and choose when and where they're gonna use them, right? Because if they use the same rules all the way across the board, honestly and truly, they would be fucked up in the game. They would have to make certain admissions that they don't want to make. My man over here can't decide which one it is between Danny Garcia being a credible welterweight due to the fact that he's been in big fights at welterweight, or whether or not it's because he survived in the ring against top welterweights. I mean, which one is it, fam? And honestly, if that's your criteria, then again, fam, Mikey Garcia has to be a top welterweight. Canelo Alvarez has to be a top light heavyweight. You know what I mean? I mean, these dudes survived in the ring. I mean, they survived. I mean, yeah, they moved up. They were in the big fights. They survived. They gotta be top contenders in those divisions, even though it was their first fight moving up. They gotta be according to your criteria, fam. But let's keep it moving up.
But my thing is this, though, for people who say that, you know, Danny Garcia is not a legit welterweight because he lost all his big fights at 147. How many big fights did Terrence Crawford opponents win at 147? How many big fights did Jose Benavidez win at 147? How many big fights did Jeff Horn win at 147? How many big fights did Kavalauskas win at 147? Or even Amir Khan?
So first of all, fam, Jeff Warren beat Manny Pacquiao, which is a bigger win than everything Danny Garcia has on his entire resume. That's one. 2, Kell Brook beat Amir Khan and Sean Porter, which is also a bigger win than everything Danny Garcia has on his entire resume. So I'm really trying to understand like what point you're trying to make with this argument right now. You know what I mean? You're trying to compare big wins. You're trying to say because like the fighters that Bud Crawford has doesn't have big wins unlike Danny Garcia. Like, no. First of all, at the end of the day, they didn't get the same opportunities that Garcia got. Okay? And then secondly, these are the only fights that we really have to go by when it comes to Danny Garcia. The dude is 6-3 at welterweight. He has a 66% win ratio at welterweight, fam. That's horrible. If that was a grade, it would be a D. You know what I'm saying? If that was a grade, it would be a D. If that was a grade, if Danny Garcia was in college right now, he would flunk out with a D. You know what I'm saying? That is not the makings of a credible welterweight, fam. I don't know where you're going with this shit, but let's keep it going.
I think somebody said, they say his claim to fame was what he did at 140. But it's like, bro, he was a champ though. Because if we doing that, then we could easily discredit Terrence Crawford then, right? Because he didn't really do nothing that impressive at 147. He beat one dude. He beat Jeff Horn and won the title. So I'm confused, but
So do you hear the Errol Spence fanboy energy come out yet? Do you hear it? Do you hear it slithering out? Do you hear it kind of creeping out? The Errol Spence fanboy energy, the Fanager energy. Do you hear it? Terrence Crawford ain't really do shit at 147. He ain't really do nothing. You know, Danny Garcia and Terrence Crawford, they pretty much did the same thing. I mean, you know. Except for the fact that Terrence Crawford fought Jeff Horn in his first fight at welterweight, beat Jeff Horn, okay? Actually beat the champion, something that Danny Garcia didn't do, because we know Danny Garcia got his belt off of a vacant belt. You know what I'm saying? We know he got that, you know. So Terrence Crawford actually beat the champion, right, at 147 pounds, right? And then in addition to that, proceeded to defend his belt. How many times? I mean, y'all counted them up for me. Y'all count them up. Let me see how many of y'all remember this. A 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 5 times Terrence Crawford was able to defend his belt after he took the belt off the champion Jeff Horn, who beat the #1 guy in the division, Manny Pacquiao. But yet and still, he's put in the same breath, he's put in the same category as Danny Garcia, a guy with a 6-3 record at welterweight. 66% win ratio for Danny Garcia, but we putting him in the same category as Terrence Bud Crawford, according to this dude Boxing Vibes, right? He in the same category, right, fam? I mean, this is the logic that, this is what these Errol Spence fans like to do, man. And the funny part about this whole argument, too, on top of all this dumb shit, right, is fans like you like to give Errol Spence all this credit for beating Errol Spence Jr. Danny Garcia. But you want to discredit Terrence Crawford as a legitimate welterweight. I don't understand. That's what this whole topic of conversation is all about. That's what you're responding to. But even in the very sense of the word, you're not even responding correctly, because you're trying to take things at face value. You want to say, well, Danny Garcia is a top 10 welterweight, knowing Danny Garcia moved up from 140 pounds and got his title shots based on his merits at 140 pounds. Shoot, everybody that moves up is going to be top 10 in whatever weight class they move up to, as long as they're a champion. Sure, if you want to base your top 10 based on that, okay, I concede, you're right. That doesn't mean that he is a credible welterweight. That doesn't mean that a win over Danny Garcia means anything. That doesn't mean that Danny Garcia is worth shit at 147 pounds. You know what I mean? So, my nigga, I'm gonna need you to stop conflating the arguments. I'm gonna need you to get the point. And I'm gonna need you to come out the closet as an Errol Spence fanboy, because I know who he is. I know what y'all are. I know what it is. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep it going.
If Terrence Crawford would have fought Danny Garcia, they would be all over it. They would be all over it. Talking about how he did this and he did that. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous, man. To say that Danny Garcia wasn't a top welterweight is just ridiculous.
All cap. That's all cap, fam. As a matter of fact, Terrence Crawford fans were actually telling Terrence Crawford not to fight Danny Garcia. Why? Because we knew Terrence Crawford wasn't going to get any credit for beating Danny Garcia. Just like Terrence Crawford doesn't get credit for beating Sean Porter. Just like Terrence Crawford doesn't get credit for beating Kell Brook. Just like Terrence Crawford doesn't get credit for beating Amir Khan or anybody else from Errol Spence fans. So Terrence Crawford fans were actually telling Terrence Crawford not to fight Danny Garcia, even though Terrence Crawford wanted the Danny Garcia fight, and Danny Garcia ducked Terrence Crawford at 2-weight divisions, if you really want to be technical. So again, fam, you over there intentionally, I don't know if you were intentionally missing points. I don't know exactly what's going on your end, fam. But one thing that I can tell you for sure, man, is Danny Garcia, although you could call him a top 10 welterweight technically, right? Given the fact that he moved up from 140 pounds. Doesn't mean that he's a credible welterweight. Doesn't mean a win over him is worth shit. And then at the same time, fam, you admitted earlier that Mikey Garcia wasn't a credible welterweight. So you really need to pick an argument. Either he is a credible welterweight or he ain't a credible welterweight, because based on the logic that you're using, the fact that Terrence Crawford, the fact that Danny Garcia fought for a belt, well, Mikey Garcia fought for a belt too. The fact of the matter, the fact that Danny Garcia was in the big fights, well, Mikey Garcia was in the big fights too at 147, right? All the logic that you're using to give Danny Garcia this credibility at welterweight can be applied to anyone who moves up in weight as a champion. And you simply cannot qualify a credible opponent at that weight class based on that. Point blank, period. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna wrap the video up here, man. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. And everybody, and I do mean everybody, be sure to hit that goddamn like button. Let me know what y'all think, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all agree with your boy, or you agree with boxing vibes, man? Also, salute the boxing vibes, man. This is all out of love, bro. Ain't no hate over here on my end, fam. It's all good over here in the neighborhood with me. You know what I'm saying? You know. But until next time, man, I'm gonna holler at y'all. Peace.